You and I were born under the sun. We learned to laugh and live while the clouds in the air welcomed us with open arms. The world a huge canvas of every color we could ever imagine. Every sunset taught us about second chances, and every time the stars caught our eyes, they reminded us how every small thing we do means something. You and I grew up breathing in magic, looking at magic, experiencing magic with the wind and the trees, getting to know new feelings like nostalgia, while you think of a forest you were so lucky to spend most of your childhood in.
Kuzampula, I'm Ayeshwini Lama. I'm the author of the young adult fiction novel Two Ends of the Sky. I'm a civil engineer by profession, and I also work closely with youth advocacy networks to work with youth's sexual and reproductive health and rights. By passion, I'm also a writer, and I mostly center my work around social issues and try to bring out topics that are not mostly talked about. Other than that, I'm also a co-founder, content writer and editor with Humans of Thimphu, the page on social media. As a kid, I was very shy, so I didn't really explore my writing talents until I was in middle school. But even before that, my parents were always supportive of my journey as a reader and a writer, and they always bought books for me and invested in wholesome kind of learning experience for me. But it was only when I moved to Thimphu with my parents when I was around 12 years old that I actually started exploring my talents as a writer. In middle school, I had this one English teacher who was always so supportive of me and motivated me every step of the way. I used to write these small poems at the back of my English notebook, and I would show it to her, and she always gave me really encouraging comments and also gave me good feedback that helped me grow as a writer. This is one of the pages that I saved. It was a poem that I think changed the way that I wrote poems, and she gave me very interesting comments, and she really motivated me with this. I keep this very close to my heart. Ever since middle school, I continued writing. I would write on my social media pages about anything and everything that I went through. I'm an only child, so I found this kind of solace in writing. I found a friend, a companion in words, and I found that the more that I wrote, the more I was able to express myself in a way that other people around me could understand me, and that kind of drew me to the beauty of writing, and I just got hooked. I have always been a fan of fiction novels. I love reading fiction. I don't think there's more than 3 non-fiction books that I may have read till now. I feel guilty to admit that, but that's the truth. And I love fiction. So that is why I love the art of storytelling so much, especially creative storytelling. And that is why I got into it in the first place. After high school, I went to a college in Bhutan. It was an engineering college, and of course in a technical college, it's difficult to try to grow your writing habits or your reading habits. You don't have any time to do any of that. You're stuck doing assignments all the time and trying to look at all the engineering aspects of things. And in that kind of a setting, my creativity kind of suffered a bit because I consider myself to be a highly creative person, and I'm happiest when I'm being creative. So I really felt the need to do more, So coincidentally and fortunately, when I was in second year, there was this exchange program that came to our college. There was a project from Erasmus, and I applied to it. And it wasn't very common for a person in second year to get selected. But I think it was because I wanted it so much that I actually got it, and there were other seniors with me. There were 2 senior girls with me who went to Spain. We stayed there for 6 months, and in that time, I saw a lot and I met a lot of new people, and I learned so much that it kind of gave me this renewed sense of purpose in life. I mean, when I was there, I wasn't writing or doing anything I wasn't doing anything that had a concrete result. But of course, I was learning so much in the way, and I just felt so free. I didn't have to think about when the next deadline was or anything like that, and that was when I realized that I wanted to do so much more than just get a degree at the end of 4 years. So I came back after 6 months, and in our college we have this, because we don't have mid-year intakes, we have to stay home for 6 months after you go for a 6-month exchange. So I was home for 6 months, and I had a lot of time in my hands. So I decided that I would, write the book that I always wanted to write. I had the story in my mind for at least 2 or 3 years, and I never actually got the time to do it because life always came in between, right? But this time I had time. I had 6 months, and I knew, that it was enough time for me to actually do something that would remain, for the rest of my life. So I started writing my book, Two Ends of the Sky. So when I first started with Two Ends of the Sky, I actually, started with the title. Something funny about me is that I have this idea, that stems from the title. So with this book, I started with the title and then built my plotline around it, and I built my characters around it. And with the new manuscript that I have, which is almost complete, also I started with the title. So that's something, I think that's something personal to me, and I like working that way. So when I first started writing my characters, and these are the kind of notes that I wrote, I had a very tiny notebook. I thought that would be enough, foolishly, and I started writing all of these, my characters. I had their names and the things that I wanted them to be like, and I started writing a timeline because this book stretches over a pretty long timeline. It starts with snippets of when my main characters were kids, and then it goes on to the main story where they're in college now and all of that. So I really had to explore a lot with the timeline, and I also changed the narratives a lot in the book, as in, the snippets are from third-person point of view, and the actual story goes between the two main characters in my book. So I had to explore a lot when it came to writing technique, when it came to, what I wanted my voice to be like, because I was writing from the, point of view of two different characters. So I had to work a lot on that. But eventually, when I realized that the small notebook that I had was not going to be enough, I got a bigger one and I started writing here. I wrote about, all the characters that were going to be there. And the first thing I thought of was this line which says, "What will make my story different than anyone else's?" This is just a sneak peek into the whole brainstorming journey. So after I was done writing this book, after many times of rewriting one chapter, after many times of trying to rebuild my character, trying to fix the plot and all of that, when I was finally done and I had this, concrete manuscript that I knew could be published, I talked to my father. And I, asked him if I should get it published, and he said, definitely, you should, try to get it published and all of that. So I was inspired, I was motivated to do it, and I actually wanted to reach out to, big publishing houses overseas, and I reached out to a lot of literary agents, but because we come from a very small country where there's not a lot of acclaimed writers, it was very difficult to get an agent. So after about a few months of trying to get it done that way, I decided to publish it here itself. I also looked at a lot of publishing houses in the country, but I figured out that it was better to self-publish, especially for a debut writer. I realized that it was better if I just published it on my own. And luckily, my father was willing to invest and help me publish my books. So he invested the money for printing and all of the other things that were needed, and I finally, got around to doing it. we looked for a printing house. I had all the layout ready and everything. We looked for a printing house, and we had to get some registration done with BICMA, and we had to get an ISBN number, and with all of that, it was finally going to come true. Unfortunately, the printing house had some issues, and we had to wait for almost 2 months before my books were printed and ready. And in that time, I had to go back to college, and it was a pretty, I was pretty nervous because I was getting my book published and it was taking a lot of time, and I was scared, I didn't know what the market was like. I didn't know if people would even like it. I didn't know if they would buy it. I was anxious because my father was investing quite a lot of money into, doing something that I wanted to do. And it was really scary, I'm not going to lie. It's scary when you're putting, so much of trust into something that you came up with. But after a few months of waiting, when I finally got my first copy of the book in my hand, it was just a trial copy. They hadn't even printed the whole batch yet. I got the first copy, and it was so amazing. I couldn't believe that I had this book in my hand with the cover and everything, and it was so amazing. I had dreamt of this moment for years since I had started writing on my Instagram. I had dreamt of this, and now I finally had this copy in my hand. Now, there are no words to explain how I felt in that moment. As of today, I have one unpublished manuscript, one half-finished one, and a couple of chapters of, half-scribbled ideas. Tomorrow I may have some more, and that's what the writing process looks like. It's messy, sometimes it's even frustrating, it takes a lot of time and effort, but at the end of the day, it's all worth it. I want to have a little chat with you guys about mental health. I'm here to wish you all a very happy... Becoming an author has given me experiences of self-growth that has altered my life forever. The next time that I publish another book, I would like to mark it before I start printing so that I know exactly what the market looks like and know how much to print and what kind of readers are out there. So that's one thing that I would like to change. Publishing a book boosted my confidence and belief in my own work, and now I actually know that I will be able to write another one and another one after that. And if you're a young writer who wants to put your work out there, I would definitely encourage you to do so. Because the only thing that you really need to succeed as a writer and author is the willingness to learn and grow and a belief in your work. That's all you need. At the beginning, we only got around 500 copies because we were not sure, if people would buy. We weren't sure if the price would be too much. I set the price at 400 Neutrum because, it seemed appropriate, and it was like double the price that I had spent on it, which we felt was, necessary to make a profit. And so we set it at 400, and we were not sure if people would buy it. But within 1 month of launching the book, almost 400 copies were already sold. So my parents thought that we should make more copies, and we made a few, not a few more, but we made like a couple hundred more. And at this moment, after around, I think 2 years of getting my book published, I think I have around 10 to 15 copies left, and almost all the others are sold. Soon after, I got a lot of direct messages, and people would tag me on their social media stories with the book and would say that they could relate to it. I also got very interesting messages where people said they were, they felt like they were a part of the story that I had written, and they said they could really relate to things. There are, small things in the book that people felt really close to. So they told me about that, and in those moments, I felt like I had done a great job, not going to lie, right? I felt so accomplished. Of course, with good things also come, negative criticisms or constructive criticisms also. So there were those as well. And I am a very optimistic person. So when someone came to me and said, things like, maybe you could improve on this, or maybe you could write this better. Also, I didn't set the story in Bhutan, so there were a few people who said that maybe I should do that so that people here can, relate to it better. So I thought about it, and I'm thinking of writing one of my future books in Bhutan because, because I've lived here my whole life and I know so much about this place, right? It's my home country. So I want to write about people here, and I'm definitely going to do that in the future. After I wrote this book and published it, so many other opportunities came to me, and I also developed, a confidence in me about my writing skills, and I started doing a lot with my writing. So before, like I said, I only used to share it on my personal social media pages, but after this I started using this even for other works. For example, in 2019 I got to go to a very esteemed youth forum in Thailand, which was for a very important summit in terms of SRHR, the youth advocacy world. So that I got selected for because of my writing. When I applied, I said I was a writer, and they were looking for various kind of youth participants in the program. So they selected me simply because I was a writer. So that was pretty interesting to me because I never thought that being a writer could help me penetrate into other kinds of worlds, and this was a very new opportunity for me. So when I got there, I learned that a lot of the people there were working with various agencies or organizations, and I was not affiliated with anyone, but I had my writing. And because of that, I even got to give an opening address on behalf of all the youth who were present there at the UNSCAP building in Bangkok. So that was a very big deal for me, and it's still one of the most important moments of my life, where I, as a youth advocate, actually delivered a spoken word poetry in front of so many delegates. And that was interesting because I had never seen that happen before. And everyone who was there, my mentors and the facilitators, they were really happy with it. And that is when I realized what a huge scope writing actually has. So after that, I joined Humans of Thimphu. This was just last year. So we started Humans of Thimphu, and as a content writer and editor, I was looking for stories, I was meeting new people, and there are so many stories that people have to tell. As a co-founder of the initiative, we had this idea that we wanted people to be able to tell their stories, especially in cities like Thimphu, where most of us don't have anyone who's actually going to listen to us. I don't even know my neighbors, to be honest, and there are so many people here who don't have anyone around, especially if they don't have their family here. So we wanted people to have this kind of platform where they can share their stories, talk about their sorrows, share their celebrations, and do all that. And I feel like the page has done exactly that, and we are so grateful that there are so many people reading, and it gives me a purpose to write every day, and that's what I love the most about it. As a writer, putting your work out there for people to read is the most daunting thing ever, and being able to be confident enough to do that is something that's very important in your journey as a writer. So to young writers out there, I think that it's very important that you believe in your work first. And you can do that by practicing a lot. You can do that by letting your closest friends read your work and sharing it with your parents or your teachers. And I'm sure that everyone around you really wants to support you. And as long as you let them support you, they are going to. So if you're a young writer, I urge you to get yourself out there and try to let people read your work so that you know what your words are worth. It definitely is difficult to be a writer, especially in a city where you need to, spend a lot of money every day. So I would be lying if I said that I just want to be a writer for the rest of my life, because like I said, I am a technical graduate, I'm an engineering graduate, and I would probably end up doing something in that line. Writing may not pay your bills because it's pretty difficult, especially in a developing country where there's not a lot of scope. But of course, if you're trying to satisfy yourself, or if you're trying to fulfill your creative needs, then I think writing is the best career for you. And for me personally, after I wrote my book, the little profit that I may have made from publishing my book was very satisfying to me. It was money that I earned from my own creativity, and that was something that can never be replaced by any other kind of money that I ever own. And that's something I think that's very important to remember as a writer.
No one really taught me that I shouldn't cry in public. It is just something that I learned with time, to muffle the sobs and hold back the tears so no one would see my insides. I wonder sometimes if it's worth it to hide our troubles from the light, but you and I both keep hearing that it's better to keep some wounds out of sight. And although the word never taught me to turn to the wall when my heart broke, I learned it through sightings and habit that weaknesses are best kept unknown. So I struggle to speak words of truth, to try and tell you that my insides hurt, from so many things, but the most of all, from all the tears that have turned to dirt. So I get that it takes people like you and me time to open the windows and let in the light. I get that it takes people like you and me, love, to unlearn the lessons that have driven us rough. But I think it is time to be a river. We have far too long been a rock. I think if we tried hard enough, we could once again be soft.